You are listening to the voice of the frontline protector here at the Private Officer Beat Radio. Every week you'll hear breaking news, topics of training, information for the industry of security, public safety, and law enforcement. So strap in, hang on, we're about to speed off in this episode of the Private Officer Beat Radio. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the LP Zone, where everything is all about loss prevention, asset control, organized retail crime, mall security, physical, and uniform and plainclothes security as it relates to retail outlets across the country and around the world, of course. Today we have kind of a unique topic that we're going to be talking about as we're looking at kind of a trend that, a number of years ago, some businesses began using man traps. But now we're starting to see more retail, high-end retailers, even convenience stores now installing these devices. So we're going to talk about what a man trap is and also how they work and if they're legal. And there's all sorts of things that we need to consider. And, of course, we've got a little bit of breaking news to bring you as well. I'm your host, Rick McCann, founder and CEO of Private Officer International. And today we're talking about containment, confinement, and control. And that's what a man trap is all about. With the amount of high-end thefts that have been happening over the last 3 or 4 years, with the amount of violence occurring during these high-end thefts, robberies, takeover robberies, more and more retailers and businesses are looking at the various ways to decrease the violence and protect their employees while also capturing or preventing the escape of the culprits. We have seen multitudes of videos of private security officers, almost always unarmed, uniformed private security personnel hired at pharmacies, convenience stores, and big box stores to prevent these thefts, but they're overwhelmed and they're being told, in many cases, hands off. Observe, report, try to get a license plate, get a description. These thieves are not afraid of these security officers. They're not afraid of even law enforcement arriving on scene. We have seen gangs, sometimes more than dozen, 2 dozens. In one case, an estimated 60 people ravaged the high-end retailer at will, with no one stopping them at all. And they're becoming more and more aggressive. Now, we've talked about a while back, a month or two, about how some stores have begun installing a safe room, much like many wealthy people have in their homes, many business leaders have in their place of employment, their business. And these are rooms that you can go into. They're self-contained. They have phones. They have just someplace to get into safe if someone is breaking into your home or your business. And it prevents that person from getting to you and you're able to call law enforcement. Well, some retailers have also begun installing those. But now there's talk about putting in man traps. And as I said, several convenience stores and retailers already have. Containment, confinement, control. They're bullet resistant glass. Sometimes they are a complete sally port or portal where the doors come down and the person is trapped. A number of school systems as well have begun using these vestibules to protect folks, protect the school, protect the students, the employees, and it adds another layer of security so no one actually gains access until they're screened. Many schools have identification systems where the individual provides their driver's license and they run them through the system to see if they're wanted, to see if they're a felon, and it gives them that added layer of security. Well, this is kind of the same, on the same theory, the same page as far as instead of controlling access into the convenience store or the retail shop, this is going to control that person's movement once they've committed a crime within the premises, and it locks them in. Banks in some areas have used these for years. So a man trap, or also called a security man trap, a portal, an airlock, a sally port, basically it controls the physical movement of a person. They are used in many areas, including jails and prisons, government buildings. In a manual man trap, a guard, a security officer, locks or unlocks each door in a sequence. An intercom or video camera is often used to allow the security officer to control that trap. A person comes in the vestibule and he is trapped in there. He cannot gain entry into the main building until he's buzzed in. In an automatic type man trap, once identification is provided, like I said, oftentimes in the school setting and sometimes in other settings, such as a jail, the person is identified and run through a system, and then that inner door is allowed to open and the person has access. Metal detectors are sometimes also built in to prevent the entrance of people that are carrying weapons. We're talking inbound, not outbound at this moment. This use is also pretty frequently used in banks, high-end jewelry stores. I've seen convenience stores now with man traps. Fire codes are something that has to be considered, and we'll get into that as well. A man trap often stabilizes the security of a suspect or a person unknown who's coming into the building. If we're talking about the exit of the person, the man trap can be a holding cell of sorts until law enforcement can get there. We really need to look at the value of installing a man trap in a retail environment and whether or not it's even worth it, because they are very expensive. But this is a way to apprehend the suspect. It's not preventing them from entering the store, although you can do that as well. And maybe some high-end retailers will begin using that man trap to secure the people from coming in. Now, just recently, I believe this was in Florida within the last week, I saw a news report with video showing a man who appeared to be an armed security officer. He went to a cell phone store that was locked. You had to be buzzed in. The employees of the cell phone store saw this uniformed officer and obviously immediately considered that it was no threat and buzzed him in immediately. And he nonchalantly came in. He looked at some phones within the cases, and then suddenly he pulled his firearm and told them it was a robbery. Quite to their surprise, I'm sure. Can you imagine, somebody in a uniform that you think is going to be trustworthy? You allow them in the store, everything is going good for a minute or two, and then all of a sudden, bam, just like that, they pull a firearm and they rob the store. So unexpectedly, it would be like a nun or a priest at the door. You certainly would not consider them a threat, nor would you think that the intent would be to rob you. Man traps have been used for many years. When we come back from our first break, we'll talk about the value, some considerations that must be given, possible liability that a retailer would be assuming if a person is injured, has a panic attack, and really it does work, but in this situation, when we're talking about shoplifting or robbery at the most, is this really a necessary step? Is it really something worth considering, worth spending the money on? Man traps. That's what we're talking about today. You're listening to the LP Zone, where everything is all about loss prevention, retail, security, asset control. We're coming right back right after this break. Body Armor USA, we've got what it takes to protect you. Whether you're looking for the top quality protective armor or protective clothing, stab-resistant vest or gloves, contact my friend Ben over at Body Armor USA. Give him a call, 516 area code 817-1666. Again, that's area code 516-817-1666. Body Armor USA, we've got what it takes to protect you. No doubt about it.
It's a very simple thing. It only takes 2 seconds. We all know we should do it. We all say we do it. But do we? About 35,000 people were killed in motor vehicle accidents last year. More than half were not wearing a seatbelt. A brother, a father, a mother, a best friend. Is it worth it? I lost a sister. Don't let it happen to you and your family. Tell the people you love to buckle up.
I don't want to go blind from diabetes.
I don't want to lose a foot or a leg.
I don't want to have kidney failure, so I'm taking control.
I'm controlling my diabetes.
It's making a huge difference.
I'm eating healthy and staying physically active.
I'm taking my medicine.
If I can do it, anyone can.
Control your diabetes for life. Call 1-800-438-5383.
Are you looking for the finest private security officer training in the Charlotte metropolitan area? Do you need PPS qualifications in armed or unarmed training? Or maybe you're over there across the line in South Carolina and you need the sled training. Well, we've got the right training at the right time for you. Premier Training Academy, located at 5624 Executive Center Drive, Suite 142 in metropolitan Charlotte, North Carolina. Give them a call today, 704-806-4933. They also offer firearms training, personal protection, first aid and CPR, and so much more. Call John at 704-806-4933. Welcome back, everyone, to the LP Zone. Today we're talking on the Loss Prevention Zone all about not really a new concept, not really a new idea, but one that is being currently used in a number of different types of businesses, and one that is being considered in some other types of businesses. We're talking about what's called a man trap. This is a containment, confinement, control area, a very small area. And in this area, all that you have to do as the person is entering the building into a vestibule, they're locked in, they identify themselves, and then they are allowed in to the business. On the way out, exiting the business, if they've committed a crime, a employee or a security officer can press a button, and that will lock that person in and hold them like a prison, like a jail, until law enforcement can arrive on scene. Oftentimes, these have metal detectors, and that allows the retailer or security officer to know whether or not that person is armed before allowing them into the building. And of course, they are bullet-resistant glass as well, so it makes it much more difficult for the person to try and shoot their way in or shoot their way out. Man traps are typically used in jails and prisons, kind of as a sally port to secure the prisoner in an area while processing that person into the facility. But we have seen them in convenience stores. We've seen them in hospitals. We're beginning to see them in schools. And the way that we're hearing people sell the concept of using the man trap, there's different thought processes on what it's going to be used for. Like I said, in some situations, such as schools and courthouses and jails, it's inbound. It's to detain and secure that person until they can identify that person, until they can determine whether or not that person is trustworthy or armed, or if they are posing any type of threat. A man trap provides security, containment, control, and this is accomplished in many different ways. The most common is with magnetic locks, but it can also be achieved manually. The use of security officers sometimes are used in courthouses and schools. Man traps are not only used in high security applications, but we're also seeing them used in what's called clean rooms, where the flow of air and dust must be controlled. Very, very unique. The most unlikely place that I've seen a man trap was at a place that was a bat conservancy, where the prep area required gloves and aprons and rubber boots, and everyone had to dress out in this locked area, and they were locked behind the doors before they could step into a bleach solution and then enter that habitat. Very unusual, huh? Well, man traps are often used as a physical security to separate non-secure areas from secure areas. And like I said, they are costly. Most run between $30,000 and $60,000 each, but they can run as high as $100,000, depending on the complexity, what they're made of, the materials, the level of security and sophistication that the user mandates. Basically, think of the man trap as access control. It's a small space. It consists of two interlocking doors. One set of the doors must close before the other one can be opened. So what happens is it's kind of like a cage, you know, kind of like getting an animal trapped in a cage. So retailers are beginning to install this, from convenience stores to high-end stores. Banks have used them. Schools are now beginning to use them. They say that it helps to detain that person while they run their background, while they figure out what they want, and it prevents anyone who's armed from entering, so it really prevents an active shooter in many cases. Man traps, like I said, they're interlocking doors, two doors, a cage. And so some have brought this up as a method of at least delaying an active shooter situation so that the school can go on lockdown. Sometimes they're even triggered by tripwire. I have not really seen this, but they say that that's also a method. Employees can hit a button, and that's the advantage here in the school setup, and they can trap that person coming in. They can trap that person going out. It's not really gun control, but it does prevent an entry into the building, or in the situation with retail, it could capture the suspects. But now, you got to remember, if you got multiple suspects in the store and they're robbing the store, 5 or 6 or 20 people won't be fitting in the man trap. It is a small, confined space, maybe 2, 3 possibly, definitely not a dozen or 30 or 40 or 50. So it's not going to work in every situation, but it is a confinement control apparatus, and it does work well. Is it worth spending $100,000 for one door? Is it worth spending $50,000 to apprehend 1 or 2 suspects and prevent them from escaping? In some cases, it might be. Man traps are also being now used in casinos and gaming facilities where a lot of cash is handled. And, you know, a person wanting to withdraw money from the casino's cashiers enter a certain area. And again, this prevents robbery. Armored car facilities also use them, oftentimes in the control and transfer of cash. These are not things that have just suddenly appeared on the horizon, but they are something that are being talked about and used in a variety of areas that maybe they weren't intentionally constructed or thought to be useful for, but now they are. Door interlock systems have been around for a long time, and they provide a very unique form of protection not afforded by, you know, your conventional access control system like locks. You know, are these really necessary in a retail environment? I don't have the answer for that. That's something that I believe there's a lot of conversations about right now. I know that in some cases, stores have already begun installing them. So you have a shoplifter, he's already done his business, and he's heading out the door. Do you want to contain him? Do you want to control them? Is this $100,000 or $50,000 apparatus really is it worth it? If your store has already installed these, please send us an email at helpdesk@privateofficer.com. If you've heard a rumbling that the store may or are looking at installing these devices, we'd love to hear more about it. helpdesk@privateofficer.com. That's going to do it for this edition of the LP Zone. And don't forget to listen to our Monday morning broadcast of the Private Officer Beat Radio. And be sure to join me every other day on Coastal Alabama's all-new Highway 98 radio, where everything is local news, local events, plenty of music, entertainment, and much more. Until the next time, y'all be blessed, be safe, and we'll see you back here on the radio.